pick and roll with it. Make a pick and roll with it. Betting weekly. Fast break. From coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way downtown.
Elimination Day in the conference semis, or the WNBA semis, as we welcome you to a Betting Weekly Fast Break live edition here on this Tuesday. I'm Doug Kezirian alongside Albert Nguyen, also known as Analytics Capper. And right now, the biggest story is actually Nafisa Collier's 5-minute State of the Union speech, ripping into management and league commissioner Kathy Engelbert. So that's getting some buzz. But we have a game to discuss. Game 5, winner advances to the WNBA Finals to face the Phoenix Mercury. And we have a pretty sizable home favorite here in this elimination game. Are you ready for a Game 5 tonight, Albert?
I'm excited for it. True transparency, I haven't watched every second of this series, but I'm definitely going to watch the entire Game 5 tonight. Very intriguing, right? We just from a macro level, Indiana with all of their injuries, especially to their superstar and Caitlin Clark, the Aces going on that historic run to end the season, and now they're in Game 5 of the semis. I think it's going to be great theater. I think it's going to be a lot more competitive than people expect, but I'm excited to watch it tonight.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to discuss. We're going to break down this game from every angle, side, total, props, narratives. Certainly a lot of things in play. And you and I remember before the playoffs started, I had to do a double take when I was like, how are the Fever 250-1? If nothing else, I know books had so much liability at them at the beginning of the season at 3-1 plus 280, whatever it was. And I just didn't think they could be that big of long shots because they still have Kelsey Mitchell. They still have Aaliyah Boston. And it's not like these teams are that insurmountable. It's not like, the Liberty, what were they, the third favorite? You and I both thought they were overrated and weren't going to get to the finals. I've been pushing the Mercury all season, and we have some hedging discussions. We already have Adam Osimo chiming in the chat about, do you take the guaranteed payout? Do you hedge? Like, what's the best way to play this futures ticket that we literally discussed on this very program? So a lot to get through. But we have the Aces as 8-point home favorites here, 157.5. And there's Adam's comment. Unbelievable. The Mercury in the finals, that 25-1 ticket is in currently 10 times the small amount I bet on it if I cash out. But do you think the Mercury will beat the Aces? Who do you think will win tonight? Okay, well, let's get into it. First things first, which I think is important to do. And I like to do this when we only have like 1 or 2 games on the schedule, because I like to use our time to sort of flush out what goes through at least my head when I break down a game like this. It's what are the outside forces in play? And I thought A'ja Wilson's commentary in the post-game press conference was really interesting, right? She talked about the favorable whistle that Aaliyah Boston was getting. And anecdotally, she said during the game that Aaliyah says, gosh, I'm getting a good whistle tonight or something like that. I think she had 11 free throws in the third quarter alone. So the Fever avoid elimination at home in Game 4, forced the Game 5 in Vegas. But what impact do you think the discussion of officiating, particularly from A'ja, will have on this game? She has a prop of 24.5. By the way, that's part of the equation. But what impact do you think that'll have on this particular game?
Doug, it's a very interesting question, because this complaining, if you will, or this diatribe when it comes to officiating has been on a daily basis every single game in the WNBA, especially these not only playoff games, but some of the big regular season games as well. It is an issue. We do know that the officiating in the WNBA is not the best quality. Let's get that straight. But at the same time, I think what players expect is not perfection from officials, Doug. It's fairness. So if you call it one way, make sure you call it the other way. If you don't call it one way, vice versa, right? So I think that's what we as fans want, and that's definitely what the players want. In terms of how it's going to impact tonight, I personally still think Aaliyah Boston's going to have a great game. She's been rolling. She's going to continue to, dominate the rebound. She's going to get to the free throw line. But I think Asia Wilson potentially might be getting a more favorable whistle, but that is contingent on her aggressiveness. She can't just settle for jump shots and mid-range jumpers to get those calls. She has to attack the hoop and attack the rim to be able to put that pressure on the official.
It is interesting, and the reason I bring it up is like, look, this officiating in the league is sort of malleable, and you can influence it. They're elementary. It is a problem, to your point. Consistency is what people want, and it needs to improve. And sadly, the best officials sort of graduate to the NBA, right? And the good ones that are okay ones kind of stay in this level. And I don't know what's being done behind the scenes. I don't pretend to know how to run a league in this specific way, but I do know the officiating can be influenced. And I do think there's betting angles. Like, do I think Asia's going to get a more favorable whistle to start? Maybe. I mean, I think officials are influenced by the crowd, and this will be obviously pro Vegas being where it's located. I do think Boston holds her own against Asia more than most. I mean, she's looked up to her. They're both South Carolina products, and she has the size to at least make things difficult. And that's why Asia hasn't gone like absurdly off in this series that she might in other series. Game sevens in the NBA typically go way under, right? Because there's more measured possessions. Refs don't really want to control everything, so they swallow the whistle a little bit. I do think this has been an under series, so I would be looking to bet the under. We did have 173 in the last game. The Fever sort of unlocked some stuff offensively, but before that, it was 156, 158, 162. So lower scoring games. I don't have a play on the total, but I'm curious if the officiating, that's part of the discussion. Do you have a play on the total or Asia's prop of 24.5?
I would lean the under on both, to be honest, for the reasons that you mentioned, right? And that's just me as a bettor in general. When it comes to these big games, elimination games, not only basically in every single sport, I like the under just because people are a lot more focused. Not only are the possessions measured, Doug, and they're a lot more, slower in terms of pace, but defense is better. They've seen each other now 4 straight games. They know each other's plays. They know each other's tendencies. The first 2 games were blowouts. Then the next 2 were a little more competitive. And I think, again, I mentioned it, I think we're going to have another competitive game. The only thing I would be worried about when it comes to the underdog is if it is competitive and you'll see more fouls, then you'll see a lot more free throws. And that's something that I definitely don't want to deal with. If I was going to play the under in this game, Doug, it'd actually be the first half, just because I don't want to deal with the full game and the end of the game.
We see that in the March Madness. If there's a team that's being eliminated, then they're more likely to foul down 8 or 10. We saw that actually the other day in this stupid series. We had a second half under that did not get there. That was pretty painful, all things considered. So far, no plays. Now, we only had 1 blowout so far in the first 4 games. Another game was a double-digit win, but it was tight midway through the 4th. Game 2 at home after the Aces, that tends to happen in the NBA, the bounce back spot for the home team in game 2 if they lose game 1. But, we've had tight games really in this series. 8's a big number. What type of game are you expecting in this?
Yeah, I would say it's competitive, and I do have one bet. I'm not going to be on the sides or the total, Doug. I don't know if you want to get into the player prop that I'm focused on, but I do expect a pretty competitive game, and I expect if Vegas is going to be up just a little bit or even down in that second half, you're going to see a lot of tight shots. You're going to see a lot of missed long range shots. Maybe some players that don't take shots, which would then extend the shot clock violation, the possession, and then you'll end up taking a worse shot than what you could have had. So I actually think this game is going to be competitive. We know Indiana can play defense, and if they want to play physical, they can play physical as well. The fact that they're in this situation, game 5 of the semifinals, they're already playing with house money, right? With all those injuries. And if a team is playing free and they're the underdog, they're on the road, that's when, that you have to worry about those type of teams.
So why are you taking the 8? Because I'm going to officially take the 8. I'm grabbing +8. I just think it's too many points. I think you have a few ways to win a Fever win outright. Game that comes down to the wire, like the elimination game in the first round with the Aces with the Storm and them coming down to the wire. And sort of that backdoor cover where the Aces are trying to bleed clock in a 5 and 6 point game where they get maybe a bad possession but they use the whole 24, and the Fever can get a layup and then start fouling. Kind of that weird game where they're not going to win, but they're going to definitely cover 8. And then also the garbage 3 in the horn, when they're down 10. So I think there's just more ways to win +8. And I think the Aces can play tight unless they just go off and hit like 23s like they did down the stretch of the regular season. I think the Fever can hang, and the Fever are good enough. Like, they have 2 All-Stars, like I said. Tosh Howard is effective. Sims has been solid. Lexi Holt, there's enough pieces here that they belong on the same court.
I may eat my words here, Doug, but I'm going to put my mortgage down that the Vegas Aces are not hitting 23s. This is not the LA Sparks defense that they're facing tonight, right? They're facing a really good defense. So my play, I agree with you, right, that the 8 points is good. My play, and it's a little, it's an edge. If you look at Bet Rivers right now, Aaliyah Boston over 9.5 rebounds is -130. And again, if you look at her game log, she's been great. But Aaliyah Boston double-double is -107. So I think that's 23 cents of value that you can potentially get. Obviously, she can be stuck at 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 points, but I think she's pretty guaranteed that she's going to hit double digits in terms of points. So I'd say the double-double for Aaliyah Boston, -107, is my official play tonight. Like I mentioned earlier, I think, although she had a favorable whistle in the last couple games, I think she's going to continue to eat in this game. She's a really good player. She was the Rookie of the Year just a couple of years ago.
I like it. And she's become more aggressive as the series goes on, initiating, attacking, and not just being sort of like a centerpiece of an offense. They're like, no, you got to go to the post moves and try to score on Asia because we need you, that kind of stuff. So I'm a fan. I like that bet. I think that's a smart play. Let's get into some of these props because I'm also on props. My favorite one is Odyssey Sims over 9.5 points, and the juice is -124. So in this series, there's been 4 games. 3 of them, she's had 17 or 18 points. And the one outlier was literally 0 points. She was 0 for 7 from the field. It was just a weird game. And I just think that's an outlier. I don't think the 3 other games are. They need her to score. I just talked about Aaliyah Boston and how much Indiana needs her to score. Well, they need Sims, and she's the type of player that can generate points by herself. She's short, fast, can get to the hoop, and also spot up on the 3 if Mitchell's getting a lot of attention and the ball rotates to her. Look, she's like the 4th different starting point guard for Indiana. She was on the waiver wire midseason, but she's a starting point guard, and she's actually pretty effective. She's way better than some other point guards that were on teams to begin the season, like Haley Van Lith and some others. Like, she's good. And she's sort of adjusted, and she's not afraid to take shots. Maybe earlier in the season when she was just joining the team, maybe just trying to fit in and stay employed kind of thing. So I think she's gonna be a weapon. And another reason is the Aces defense. So Mitchell's been going off partly because they don't have anybody who can guard her. The Aces are limited with perimeter defenders, right? They don't have a Gabby Williams. They don't have a Natasha Cloud. They don't have Alyssa Thomas or someone like that, or Kalia Copper like Phoenix does. They have no one. So Jewel Lloyd can't stay with her. Chelsea Gray definitely can't stay with Mitchell. They're really limited. So that also leaves Odyssey Sims on the ball rotation. Can have driving lanes and things like that. The Aces team defense isn't that great. That's why Becky Hammond had to switch some things middle of the season, and she switched them again. So I think defense is sort of like limited, and that's why the Fever went for 90 in the last game. This Aces defense is not very good. Asia's great, like a defensive player of the year kind of winner, but Kirsten Bell plays a lot. Starts, but she doesn't play a lot. She only played 6 minutes in the last game. But Dana Evans is valuable. Now, she can stay in front of Sims, and I can see that, but they're going to need Odyssey Sims to go, 5 of 9 from the field kind of stuff and get some free throws and get some 3-pointers. So I think she sneaks in over this. I think it's going to be, it's my favorite play of this game.
I like that a lot, Doug, because if you look at the game where she had 0 points, she was 0 for 7 from the field, but the other 3 games, 7 for 13, 7 for 12, and 6 for 9. She's a great shooter. She's also a solid free throw shooter, above 80%. So if she goes to the line 2 or 4 times, that's a few freebies as well. So I like that a lot, and I think it makes sense because they're going to be focused on the other folks.
Right. Now, I worry about the free throws because of the whistle we talked about. It could be a swallowed whistle, but still, she'll be fine. And by the way, more props in a sec, but I wanted to let you know, if you like what you hear on our shows, sign up for the newsletter. get exclusive tips, and the free Insider magazine. Sign up for free at bettingweeklystudios.com. Some other props that caught my eye. I'm not quite ready to pull the trigger. The juice moved in a certain direction, so I was like, But Chelsea Gray over 5.5 assists. I was looking at that to begin with, and then the juice now is up to like minus 150. So that's pretty high. Obviously, you have to win 2 out of 3 just to break even when you're laying $1.50. But her assists in the series have been 9, 6, and 10, and game 1 was just 4 when the whole team laid an egg. So I do think 6 is the bare minimum. She could have 9 or 10. She's a willing passer and then some. It just depends on like ball movement and stuff, but she has the ball in her hands. She finds people in the transition. Fever they are capable of outplaying some decent defense. Remember, this is a team that went to Minnesota without Caitlin Clark and won the Commissioner's Cup. Okay. And they did it with their defense and the physicality. So if there's some latitude here with the whistle, they could steal this game or muck it up enough where Gray's going to be limited with assists. So that's why I'm not doing it. But if this were like 120, I'd definitely be doing it. It's just more ways to win than lose. She's going to have the ball in her hands. She's going to play a lot of minutes. It's an elimination game. And like I said, 9, 6, and 7 or whatever it was in her 3 games where she had 10 assists in the game. So this is just this number should be 6.5 and over should be minus 120.
Yeah, Chelsea Gray is an interesting player, Doug, because a lot of players, if you're a distributor in basketball, whether it's men's or women's, and your shot's not falling or you're not scoring or the play's not being run for you, you kind of check out. Whereas Chelsea Gray, being the veteran, being the savvy player that she is, it doesn't matter if she scores 0 or 20. She's always going to be distributing the ball and making the right play. So I like this 5.5. I think it's juicy for a reason. I think it's going to fly over, to be honest. So I like that a lot.
All right, I'll add it. I mean, I was looking at it for like 48 hours, so I got to play it. But you're right. It's over minus 150. It's just you have to win these. You can't. It's like baseball, right? You lay these $1.40, $1.50. You got to win a lot more than you think in games that are not coin flip, but they're losable. This should be 190. You're right. You're right. I thought 6.5, 120. It's really a low number. The concern I have is if it's just mucked up and they're just shots aren't falling, but then that probably helps my Fever +8 wager. So probably good in that regard. The other prop I was leaning towards was Lexi Hull over 8.5. Now she's different. She's a spot up shooter. She plays off the ball as opposed to, Chelsea Gray kind of thing. But man, it's they need these players. There's not a lot of options. Shea Petty's out there. Timpson's not going to shoot at all. Bree Turner's not going to shoot at all. Ariel Powers is barely playing. They need Lexi Hull to shoot, and she's going to spot up and things like that. So, she's going to last game she only had 7, but before that 16 and 15. So it's just a lot of variance here. So there's no reason to play it at minus 132. That's kind of the reason I'm not playing it.
Yeah.
But she's a big game player, and so I think she'll be comfortable and willing to step up. I think we're going to see a good performance out of the Fever in this regard. So Aces are likely to advance, obviously pretty hefty on the money line. They will, as the 2 seed, be the host team in the finals if they do in fact advance. Otherwise, it will be the Mercury hosting the Fever in the finals. And let's take a look at some of the futures here, because obviously Phoenix has punched the ticket. We talked about a couple months ago, 25-1, 30-1. So Phoenix is an odds-on favorite. Once the finals are played, if the Aces advance, Las Vegas will be favored. So that's interesting. If you think the Fever have a shot, then yeah, you're betting the Mercury now. But if you don't, then just wait and they'll be plus money. Fever, 250-1 to begin the playoffs. They're now 12-1. Pretty remarkable stuff. Now, if you want to get cute, something we always discuss around the Super Bowl, you can always bet the MVP. In this case, the finals MVP and not the Super Bowl MVP. But typically, it's hard to imagine one of these teams winning the title without their star being the MVP. So, for example, Asia Wilson, the Aces are plus 115. She's plus 120 to win finals MVP. Mercury, a little bit more of a difference because they have a couple other stars, are minus 115 to win it all. Alyssa Thomas, plus 110. So there's 25 cents of juice in that regard. Fever, 12-1. Kelsey Mitchell, 20-1, right? with these things, you have to be really careful. Now, don't get me wrong. We saw Jaylen Brown win Finals MVP recently, but it's one thing to think that they can have a big game or a big series. It's another thing to think they can win the Finals MVP. I just don't see Jackie Young winning Finals MVP and not Asia Wilson if, in fact, the Aces win it all. So I would say my advice overarching would be you can get cute, even with Alyssa Thomas, because she fills up the stat sheet. And yeah, Sabali could go off, but she could have like 2 big games. It's not like she's going to have 4 big games and things like that. And AT just has the ball in her hands so much. So I think instead of betting any teams, I would bet Finals MVP odds in the star player. I just think, do you see any scenario where someone not the star wins the Finals MVP and not, the star on that team?
Yeah, so in the NBA, it happens about once a decade. So Jaylen Brown last, a couple of years ago, and then Iguodala basically a decade before that. Like every 10 years, Joe Dumars in the 80s or late 80s. So like it does happen, but I think if you play your cards right, and I think what Doug is explaining is actually really sharp. Like because I was never big into MVP betting until the last couple of years, and you could tell that if your star player doesn't play well, you really don't have a shot. This is a really good anecdote. For example, when the Spurs were winning all those championships, right? They had 5, and most of them were in odd years, by the way. But there was one season where there was uproar that Ginobili should have won. That Manu Ginobili, if you look at his stats, he should have won because it was the things that he did from the 2-guard position was amazing. They interviewed Manu after the game or after the series, Doug, and he said, none of that would be possible without Timmy. Like, I'm getting my stuff because Timmy is on the floor. He himself would tell you he's not the MVP. So that's a good indication that these star players, the magnet, the gravity around them really opens up everything for the other players. And the other thing that Doug mentioned, very quickly in the beginning of the odds is those title odds. What you see currently is right now, right before Game 5 of Aces Fever. That's important. That's very important because if you do like the Mercury, they are going to be plus money in 5 hours, right? If you're able to wait for 5 or 7 hours, then you can get them in plus money. So those are 2 really important tidbits. To me, it's Alyssa Thomas if you're going to be a Mercury fan and they think, but for someone like Adam Osimo who's already on Phoenix, right? Then I think Asia Wilson is a great hedge.
So great points in that regard. So it is basically the path to the championship, not the best team. So the market is not saying the Mercury is the best team. No, but the Aces have to win a Game 5. So it's like adding a money line parlay, their money line tonight, and then their series price as a favorite the next round. And that's why they're plus 115 right now. That's another leg that still has to cash why Phoenix is in there. And then obviously Phoenix, it's a balance of them being a favorite if the Fever were to advance and then being an underdog. And obviously it's skewed towards them being an underdog, but not a huge underdog. I mean, Aces would be probably like minus 140 or 50, I would guess. I think the Mercury's power rating has gone up just given how they've played in the playoffs. But in terms of the MVP, yeah, I mean, Jaylen Brown was like sort of a 1A, 1B. I mean, he was, would you say was he all NBA third team, the year that he won finals MVP and Tatum was first team, So Iguodala is a different example, right? He got it because of defense. And it's funny you bring up the Spurs. I lost so much money in 2007 on Tony Parker winning final. It was such a joke. Everyone's like regrets that anybody who voted for him was like the stupidest thing. It was the sweep of the Cavs. Like Duncan should have won. It's so dumb that Parker won. But you're right, once a decade. But for the most part, in NBA or basketball, it's going to be impossible. Now, Copper could go off. She's a former Finals MVP herself, but Thomas has the ball in her hands so much, and what it's going to take, and then Asia Wilson's obviously like the straw that stirs the drink and then some for this Aces team. Adam brought up a good point. And let's go back a little bit and discuss, because he brought up hedging, because we talked about on the show, a futures market, and we've all bet it. So we have these teams at 30-1 and 20. I'm not hedging yet. I have 25-1 and 30-1 on the Mercury. So I'm not hedging yet, but it's something that's in the back of my mind that I could play out of. I want to handicap game one and things like that. I do think finals MVP is the way to go in terms of hedging on these situations. But yeah, like I do think there is a way to play out of this. And I don't like to take the guaranteed bet or guaranteed payoff or whatever it is. But I do think there's ways to think outside the box and hedge, and finals MVP on Asia would be a way to do it.
So you like hedging with another gamble, if you will, right? Like you don't want a sure thing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it has to be smart. It has to be a smart. You don't want to like, reverse jinx it or whatever you want to call it, where you lose both. But yeah, I mean, I think an Asia MVP, if it's aces against the Mercury and I have a huge Mercury future, I would bet aces. I would bet Asia finals MVP as a hedge. Yeah, I feel comfortable with that.
What if you bet the result, right? Let's say aces 3-1 or aces 3-2. Like I think you're gonna get way better number there instead of like pretty much take away the game 7 and take away a sweep because those are pretty rare, and then do a aces win by 3-1 in the series.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a best of 7, isn't it, for the first time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we've never seen this, right? We've never seen this in the W, so we don't really know how this typically would unfold. Trying to think. Yeah, you don't want to get too cute, and I think it's smart because not many people, including myself, bet a huge amount on 30-1. So if you have a small amount, you want to be careful. I mean, you risk a little to win a lot. So what are you going to try to do? Lock in like a medium amount? Like I don't know. Like you don't want to give away too many positions. You want to start to think this stuff through, but it is something to be nice. I mean, look, they're going to be underdogs in all likelihood, right? Like the aces are expected to advance today. They're sizable money line favorites. So doesn't it make sense to play out of something if you think you're going to lock in? I mean, but I don't know. I mean, the aces aren't indestructible, right? Like the Fever beat them on their home court, and they're not that great.
I agree.
So
I think I like Phoenix. I mean, let's talk about the finals. I think Phoenix, obviously, right? Phoenix would rather see Indiana just because there's no Caitlin Clark, there's no Cunningham, there's just no Asia Wilson that you have to deal with. But it's highly likely that the Aces are gonna, advance this tonight and get into the finals. And I guess the question is, how do we expect that series to go? And I think Phoenix is licking their chops. I think the fact that they're getting a couple of days of extra rest is also important. I think with Nafisa losing and now she's focused on, the other stuff, off the court stuff, which I applaud her, by the way. I like that she did that. I think Phoenix is like, well, they can do all that stuff. We're focused on basketball and we're going to, try to win this thing. And Phoenix, to me, I know they're going to be the betting underdog in this series because everybody loves the Aces, and the Aces had that, historic 17-game winning streak. But Phoenix is, to me, the deeper team, the more physical team. And I just like Alyssa Thomas in the fourth quarter. So to me, Phoenix, when the games only they're only scoring 10 to 15 points in the fourth quarter, that's Alyssa Thomas's playground, in my opinion. So the lower the score, the more, I think Phoenix is live.
yeah, I like the Mercury too. I just feel like they haven't been healthy Copper missed like 20 games or something like that, and she's a total stud. So now the 3 studs are playing together, and they start a rookie. They have another rookie off the bench. Like they're young, and it took some time for them to sort of become, like we say in college basketball, freshmen by the end of the season. They're sophomores by now.
Mm-hmm.
I think those teams are evolved and they kind of know who they are. But the Aces also hit a second gear and third gear probably. But maybe they've regressed a little bit. They can't, like you were laughing about earlier, they can't just rip through the Storm or Sparks or whatever. And they have to face real teams and real defenses. And this is a coaching sort of level matchup, whereas Becky Hammond in previous series has been the better coach. I don't know that would be the case against Tibbetts. So I do like the Mercury. I think they're the best team. I've been saying all along. So if I have a future on them and it's not a huge, I'm going to stick with it. Maybe let's just say you bet 10 to win 300. Maybe sometimes I do I want my money back, the 10, whatever it is. Sometimes I'll do it just for, I have a pro better actually. So he's all about numbers. He goes, I got to feed the beast. He's what he says. He likes to hedge a little bit. He believes in the gambling gods. So sometimes you do it just to get your money back, but also you have to factor in, let's say you made 2 or 3 futures and the other 2 teams have been eliminated. Let's say it was Liberty or whatever. then you got to factor that in. So if you do three $10 bets, it's really 30 to win 300. So, right, because you created your own prop, you had 30 to win 300. So it was really 10 to 1 on 3 teams. And, you created your own prop of one of these 3 teams. So it's all part of the math. But again, you're not going to lose what you don't put into the pot. So if you have a small wager at 25 or 30 to 1, let it ride, unless it's like life-changing money. And then you do want to take a piece of action and things like that. That's my overarching, everything's nuanced and case by case, but that's my overarching sort of philosophy when it comes to hedging and things along those lines.
No, that's great advice. My only reaction is I also believe in the gambling god. So if I have 4 or 5 bets that day, I fully expect one of them to lose as a sacrifice, for sure. For sure.
Petey chiming in the chat. I've already hedged my Fever 500 to 1 and Mercury 20 ticket with aces. All right, you're sitting good. You have the 3 teams left. What more could you possibly want? So that's really favorable situation. And Adam's saying, okay, I might just let it ride. Just a reminder, this is just one of many shows here on the Bet Rivers Network. We have some great stuff every day, especially during the playoffs. Betting Weekly Hardball, 2 p.m. Eastern, and also released yesterday, Betting Weekly Dojo with Nigel Seeley, Neil Channing, reaction to the Ryder Cup and using subjective information in betting. So fine print, if you will. All right, my man, that's going to do it for us. You and I are back tomorrow for Betting Weekly Hardball. We're going to break down all these game 2s in this wild card round. The first games are off to a crazy start. We got some late drama here in Cleveland with the Tigers and Guardians. And so you and I will be discussing baseball. The next Betting Weekly Fast Break is Friday. So they'll preview game 1 of the WNBA finals, and that will be Sarah and Wes. So they'll again, we're sporadic. We have some dark days, as we say in the industry, but still plenty of great content here on the Bet Rivers Network. So make sure you keep it tuned across the board. But want to thank everyone, especially producers Chris and Max and all the others behind the scene who do such a wonderful job to make the show look awesome. And for Albert Nguyen and everyone else, I'm Doug Kezirian. Best of luck with your wagers, and we'll see you back here next time.